Hello. Previously in our Mindfulness for Educators class, we talked about mindfulness of the body and mindfulness of feelings. Today, we're going to cover mindfulness of the mind, and specifically we're going to talk about how we give the mind and our thoughts power over us. We're going to discuss how we give these thoughts power, and we're going to talk about a simple 4 steps that you might be able to use in the future to begin to take that power back. Okay? So, we may not realize it, but we spend a lot of time with our thoughts. We have a love affair with our thoughts. We've spent our whole life believing them, letting them go crazy and create stories, and we think they're trying to keep us safe, and we listen to them. When in reality, we spend a lot of time thinking about things that never happen or things that we can't do much about. So, for example, what if my car breaks down? I mean, it's good to kind of be aware of where your car is in its process, but I spent a half an hour the other day listening to a friend talk about how her and her husband were trying to decide if they were going to buy a new car for their daughter who's in college, and they were trying to find the finances for this. And her car has done nothing. It's never even had to be fixed. It's never broken down once, but they deem that it might be getting to that age where it possibly could, right? Or another example is when we walk by someone in the hallway and he seems mad at us, and we assume, of course, he's mad at us because the world revolves around us. Not that he might just be having a bad day or might not have anything to do with us, right? So we spend this time thinking about all these things that we can't do much about. There's a wonderful quote attributed to Mark Twain in which he says, "I am an old man and I've known a great many troubles, most of which have never happened." Okay, so we want to kind of keep that in the back of our minds as we start to become aware of our thoughts. The reality is we give our thoughts power over us by not being aware of them and their effects. If we use awareness in our mindfulness practice, we come to recognize the suffering, both mental and physical, that is caused by our thoughts. Tara Brach calls this process of awareness seeing the waterfall. By sitting in meditation, we can begin to see the waterfall of our internal dialogue and recognize all the time we spend on thoughts and commentaries and judgments, and as she calls it, virtual realities, right? Who needs video games when we have this whole virtual world going on in our head that's not even real? So we have this reality, and we want to start to become aware of it because that's how we take the power back. What do I mean by suffering? How are our thoughts causing us suffering? As we become aware of our constant thoughts, through our practice, we start to recognize the patterns and the habitual patterns that are happening. And there are 3 things that you might notice that these patterns have in common. 1, these kinds of thoughts that we want to be aware of are often negative, worrying, fear-mongering thoughts. They're the what-ifs, right, that keep us up at night. The other thing is they often tend to be thoughts that cause duality or an us versus them mentality. They're the thoughts that are like, why did that person treat us unfairly? What's going on with so-and-so? They're not really the thoughts that are causing us to think of things in a universal way and sing Kumbaya and realize that we're all one in humanity. Those don't tend to be the habitual pattern thoughts. The other thing we can start to notice is that we can connect our thoughts to our bodily suffering and our feelings and our emotions. So often it's these kinds of stressful, worrying, what-if thoughts that are creating this duality and us versus them that are also causing us to have digestive issues and other stressful situations within our body. So within our practice, we're simply becoming aware of these tendencies. That's our goal. And through this awareness, we're able to connect the tension we feel in our shoulders, the furrowing of our brow, or the digestive issues to our thoughts. And more than that, we can start to recognize how different thoughts like anger or fear or joy and calm make us feel in our bodies. So in reality, when we just give our thoughts the power to run amok, we are giving them the power over how we feel also. Okay? So we can recognize that there is a level of common sense preparation that is good in life. It's good to know what you're going to do when you go out the door, or to have your 10 essentials when you go into the wilderness. But it's the what ifs that are causing us the stress and the pain. So once we start becoming aware of our thoughts, we can begin to take back that power and decide which thoughts we're going to allow and which thoughts we're going to step back from. So the following 4 steps for releasing the power of our thoughts, or as I like to think of it, taking back the power, are adapted from a talk by Tara Brach. Number 1, become aware. Become aware of that story going on in our head. And it is okay if you become aware of it when it first starts, or an hour into it. That's still that mindful moment when you become aware of it. And you're thinking, interesting. I've been thinking about that 2-second interaction I had with Tom in the hallway for the last hour while I make dinner. Just become aware. Number 2, realize and embrace the idea of our thoughts are not us. Our thoughts are not us, and they're not even always reality. So take a second to look at them. Take a second to think, okay, that was not me. That just snapped at my child. I'll talk to her about that later. I need to I'm stuck in this thought right now that's making me irritated. I'm going to take a second. Number 3, be friendly and non-judgmental with yourself and your thoughts. For example, just thinking, okay, think about that thought. I'm assuming Tom was angry with me, when in reality, he seemed tense when I walked up to him. Probably had nothing to do with me. I'm going to let go of this thought, and I'm going to assume everything's okay. So, friendly and non-judgmental. And then you can give yourself permission to reopen to the present moment. You can give yourself permission to re-ask your daughter what she was asking you, to finish dinner and to have dinner with your family. Reopen to whatever that present moment is. It's necessary to emphasize how important number 3 is in our list. Be friendly and non-judgmental with our thoughts. We are not becoming aware of our thoughts so that we can kick ourselves every time that we deem that we do something wrong. We're good at labeling things good and bad. We label people, actions, pets. We label ourselves that way all the time. But who would want to sit down to a mindfulness practice when the whole thing was about condemning ourselves the whole time and kicking ourselves? We want to be kind and non-judgmental. The other thing to become aware of is this is not a fast process. It's not like today I start meditating and following a mindful life, and tomorrow I'm immediately kinder and less judgmental. But it will happen with awareness, and over time it will happen. So give it time. We have spent most of our life trusting our thoughts. So we must be patient with our awareness practice. It will take time, but we will start to recognize our habitual thoughts, patterns, and start to be aware of these patterns that aren't serving us well. Then and only then can we begin to take back the power from our mind and those thought patterns.